Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Carl.
And you're listening to Secret Sonics. Honest conversations chock full of tactical advice to help you build your dream career in music and audio.
Whether it's skill development, mixing mindsets, personal branding, or work-life balance, we talk about ways to help set yourself up for success in the ever-changing music industry.
Let's get started.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, Carl.
You're supposed to go fast. This is going to be a fast episode.
Hi, Carl.
There we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. We are trying something new because Ben... Experiment. Ben has a human baby child coming literally any day now, and it will definitely be before this episode airs. But one of the things that we talked about was that we do not want to just go on hiatus. We would like to still keep episodes coming out. So the format might change for a few weeks, a little bit. We might experiment and be flexible with the format, I'll say that. But one of the things we wanted to do was to try doing some shorter episodes that we can really just deep dive, well, not deep dive, I guess, aggressively.
Quick dive.
Belly
flop.
We're gonna make some belly flop episodes. Wow, way to sell it, Ben.
I'm trying to be humorous about it, but yeah.
So what we want to talk about today is the role of music theory in the world of mixing.
Yeah, and production generally speaking.
And production in general, but I think, I know for me, I want to talk about it from a mixing standpoint.
Well, I would love to hear about that. So we're both we both have taken enough music courses, like you a lot more than me. Like I did AP music. I almost got enough credits to minor in music in college, but I didn't quite. So I definitely have some theory, but it doesn't go really into the jazz area. Still kind of diatonic, but all the diatonic stuff I basically know. So music theory is definitely something I studied back in the day, and it's definitely informed me as a producer, as a musician. If anything, I'd like to forget rules more often than I do. And I know you've really studied it, right? Like you majored in music, right?
Yeah. So my degree was in orchestral percussion performance. So as dorky as you can get. And I was definitely a theory nerd. And the reason I wanted to, talk about how that affects me as a mix engineer is because it's probably not the way that most people look at it. One of my biggest complaints about working with people that do know a lot of music theory is that they let music theory guide their creative decisions. They'll choose a chord progression because that's what's supposed to happen. That's how the song's supposed to resolve, or that's how that progression's supposed to resolve, right? Those are the notes that you're supposed to use in a melody over that chord progression. And, there is the whole, know the rules so you can break them, right? Or rules are meant to be broken, or however you want to look at that. And the reason that I feel that music theory is so important to me as a mixing engineer and as a drummer too, is that it helps me to problem solve. When I hear something's not right, not that I'm making a decision to make it right, aggressive air quotes that the listeners cannot see, not making it right, this is from a music theory standpoint correct. This is not theoretically correct, but there's a weird note happening that I don't like. And I can use that theory knowledge to be able to troubleshoot and pinpoint that note and figure out, well, what is the note that's bothering me? Why is it bothering me? And what are some solutions that I can do to make it more betterer, right?
So that could be melodyning or adding another chord to make it seem more on purpose. You could do that, in jazz, if you play the wrong note twice, it's no longer a wrong note, right? So there's a lot of creative ways you could use your know-how about theory to kind of make something sound right, even if it's wrong.
Yeah. I think the most common place that my music theory knowledge comes in to save the day with a problem in the mix, it's usually with backing vocals. I think that's weirdly enough where it happens the most. And I think it comes down to when the singer is recording a harmony part and, doing the, parallel thirds, doing the Jimmy Eat World thing, and doing parallel thirds, but then they're choosing a note that is maybe clashing with parts in a guitar part, for example, or in the piano, or when there is a major three chord, like a borrowed major three. If you want to get little dorky. So let's say we're in the key of C major, right?
I'm good with this stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in the key of C major, usually if it's an E chord in that key, it would be an E minor. But if you make that an E major, then that sets you up for the A minor. Like has a nice little little tension chord. But the difference between E minor and E major is that the G is sharp. It's raised in that major. So sometimes when the singer is singing and they're used to singing in C major and the chord progression is going to that borrowed major 3, but they're still singing
the G natural
when it should be a G sharp. For me, that's the most common place where it's just, there's like a really cool chord that does really help push the song forward, but then the vocal melody or the vocalist wasn't really aware that they needed to change from their normal scale to be able to adapt to that. So that's usually in, lead vocals over that particular chord, which happens quite a bit in pop and pop leading music, or it's in a harmony part because they were singing what they thought was a harmony, but then just some of the notes aren't quite
right. Maybe they even recorded it before the arrangement was fully fleshed out.
Yeah,
I bet that happens sometimes also.
So what about you? How does music theory really impact you?
In very similar ways. When I'm tracking vocals and we're coming up with harmonies for, backing vocal stuff, I will often just get on the piano and be like, let's just figure out a way to make a harmony for this, because it's not always so simple. If a melody is really moving around, if a melody is similar, it's like staying, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, if it's like staying in the same kind of area, it's usually pretty easy to come up with a harmony. But then sometimes melodies have like really funky, distances between the notes. I'm blanking on the word right now. If it's going up and down the scale in a really interesting way, and sometimes the harmony has to stay consistent and stay in like one place, and like just knowing how to like find the right notes to hit to make the chord sound good and make sure that the harmony is working with the chord progression. That's a big way that music theory helps me in the studio and the recording side of things. And also when I'm producing a song, like often the singer or the artist will have pretty simple chords, and so me being able to figure out more interesting chord progressions to make the song feel like it has more emotion, more movement, and just knowing how to just do that really easily. I would say that's the biggest thing that's been a boon for me, is like helping singers with simple chord progressions sound more sophisticated and not, it doesn't always have to be, 1, 5, 6, 4. We could add a minor 2 there. We could add a minor 3 sometimes, and we could just make things sound super interesting. And I like to do a lot of like, from learning about like figured bass stuff, I'll often do a lot of bass movements that kind of are like that. And so like I'll go down to like do like, the bass is playing the third, what I used to call a 6 chord. I don't know if that's even right anymore. Or like the bass will hit the 5 sometimes, or doing interesting stuff like that. For me, that tickles me. So I will often reach for like doing interesting bass voicings. And maybe that's also because I love like Paul McCartney and stuff. So those are kind of the biggest things. As a mixing engineer, I don't know how much the music theory plays out, but I guess it would be similar. Like maybe fixing things with Melodyne. I recently did a mix for like a Jewish song that had like a, ram's horn in it. We have a thing called the shofar. We blow on Rosh Hashanah, on the Jewish New Year. And like, it sounded really cool, but it sounded totally out of tune. So I just like hopped in Melodyne and just made it work with the song, and then it worked really well, So just that kind of very similar, I would say, to you. But yeah, as like a mixing engineer, like the technicalities of mixing, I'm not sure. That's a big question. Hey everyone, friend of the podcast and Grammy-nominated engineer/mixer Travis Ferentz hosts Progressions, Success in the Music Industry.
It's a podcast exploring creativity, productivity, and growth in music. Travis has set out to document his own journey and bring those valuable lessons to you to apply to your own career.
Join in each week for conversations with some of the industry's best and brightest about the mindsets and strategies that they use in their careers every day.
Whether you're feeling stuck, digging for inspiration, or just looking for a mix tip, Progressions is probably for you.
Go check it out wherever you get your podcasts, or click the link in the show notes.
I think for me, one of the things, like I know we've talked about this before, I'm pulled on to do like additional production for a lot of my mixing clients, or like most of my mixing clients. So one of the other ways that it really helps me is, let's say that we have too many instruments playing the same kind of part, right? Like going back to maybe some masking conversations we had before. Let's say that there's a piano and an electric guitar, and the electric guitar is doubled, and there's acoustic guitars and they're doubled, but all those guitars are playing the same voicing. Then it helps me to be able to say, okay, I hear what's happening, I recognize what's happening, and I can say, oh, can you try playing that chord up on, like the 7th fret positions instead of open? So I can make my understanding of what's currently happening and the overload of notes in that from the voicing, and how to suggest revoicing it so that way they can still get the texture that they want from that instrument, but in a way that's complementary to the other instruments that are currently there.
Yeah, love it. And similarly on a piano, right, it could be like a different inversion of the same chord that will brighten it up instead of darken it or something. And sometimes that really surprisingly makes a big difference, Like you'd be surprised how much the type of chord you're playing on the piano can make. It could sound clashy, like you said, or it could sound open, and leave room, depending on what the other source material is.
As a producer,
I love that.
How often are you asking the artists to try the song in a different key?
Oh, all the time. So here's the thing. I don't do anything in terms of like the actual production of a song until we've decided what key feels best. And even what tempo feels best. And sometimes the tempo will change because we're realizing now it's too fast, too slow. But like I will try 4 keys if I have to. Like I don't know. I'll just keep going. I'll go up. Let's go even higher. That sounded more open. This sounds like you're hitting the notes, but it doesn't feel as good. Or this feels a little darker. Maybe that will work better. And we'll go through all the keys. We'll go through almost every time. Unless the artist is just like, this is the key, I'm so comfortable with it, and it sounds good. And they'll be like, okay, cool. I guess we're doing it in an A minor, That does happen also.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I'm always surprised with how many producers I meet that don't do that.
Really?
I wonder if it's a stylistic thing. Like, I wonder if because you grew up playing like acoustic instruments, like real instruments, as opposed to primarily like electronic music.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. I also playing in bands where we had to change the keys of songs for the singers, or like if the singer for the band, the wedding band I was playing in, couldn't make it one night and someone else was coming and he just couldn't hit that key or had a higher voice even, and we would change keys and, just like, transposing songs, very easy for me as like a bass player with music theory. So like, that's no problem at all. Like, when I'm playing different piano, like I will cheat with playing piano, right? Like I'll transpose it, the MIDI stuff sometimes so that it's easier for me because I'm just not as good a piano player as I am a bass player. But like for me, that's so much of what I do.
Well, that's great. And I love that you also experiment with tempo.
Yeah, we had like a little tempo talk recently in another episode. That was fun.
Yeah. Oh man, like there are so many times where the song would just feel so much better if you just sped it up 1 BPM or slowed it down by 1 BPM. It seems like it's such an insignificant change, but it can completely alter the way that you perform something. Because even little tempo changes will adjust how many words you can get out in one breath. So it changes like your breathing patterns.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you listen back at faster speeds, like it'll just change your perspective. Like I made just a demo for myself for fun last week, and I recorded it as like a voice note on my phone, and then I played it back at like 1.5x speed. I was like, oh, that sounds really cool, like really fast. And then like I found a tempo in between that felt better, just like when you zoom out sometimes, like the zoom in, zoom out thing, that tempo is another one of those areas.
So really it seems like we're both on the same page as far as using our understanding of theory as a way to help us to explore and navigate and problem solve, not as a list of rules that we need to follow.
Yeah. A different time when we have more time to talk about it, I could say some issues that I do fall into as being a music theory nerd. That might be an interesting like parallel episode of like when to throw, music theory out the window. But definitely I think we're both using it for for the better and
for the greater good.
Yeah, and it's good that we have this information for the artists who don't have it, and we can help them make their music a better reality because we know this, and we can facilitate that for them.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
And as a listener, if you have any thoughts, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, if you have any other examples of how music theory has either saved your life or ruined your life, let us know.
Wait, and Carl, you wanted to pitch your, because we were looking at some of your prompts from your prompt list to get to this episode idea. Maybe you want to send people that way as well.
Oh, yeah. If you get to the show notes, I have a PDF download that is 370 social media questions, like social media prompt questions for producers and engineers as a way to spark ideas for things to talk about and make content about, make reels about, TikToks about. And yeah, we were using that as a way to figure out some topics for upcoming podcast episodes. And one jumped out at us and we both felt inspired in the moment. So we hit record and we did this. And hopefully you liked it enough to listen all the way to this part of the episode where we tell you to go click on the link in the show notes right before we say thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And before we say that you're awesome and you're wonderful, and by the time you hear this, Ben will be a father of 3, which is
oh my God,
crazy. So I'm going to say congratulations in advance. But on that note, bye, Ben.
Bye, Carl. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. If anything here resonated with you, please share this or your favorite episode with a friend.
And as always, we love to hear from our listeners. So find us on social media at Secret Sonics,
at Ben Wallach Music,
and at Carl Bonner. Until next time, bye, Ben.
Bye, Carl. That was good. I think the outro was great.